Welcome. My name is Jorge Pereira, and I'm a Workforce Transformation Solutions Principal for Dell Technologies. I am here to talk to you about the modern device management in the context of Windows Autopilot, Microsoft Intune, and this is a short presentation. Why this matters today. We've been doing traditional deployment for many years and improving on the traditional deployment, which is building images or not doing images at all using the OEM component. But traditionally what we have, many organizations have been doing is just wiping the OEM license and then putting it and deploying it out there, which means there's a lot of money and time spent on that level of effort, maintaining, building, and updating that image. With Windows 10, that has been a really significant problem because Windows 10 gets updated at least every 18 months, as you are aware. For organizations that have not been doing this, there is a lot of support issues because they have to done a lot of maintenance and those kinds of things. So, and typically this is also the way in which organizations have been managing devices. They've assumed those devices are internal within their local area networks, which means the new norm has been all about having remote users, having remote workers, having everybody is basically outside the local area network and outside. So the VPN connectivity, the Office 365, the file shares, and all those kinds of components become a significant issue as you're moving forward. So that's where the problem is, managing devices today in the way in which, and by the way, this has not been just recently, but even before this entire thing about COVID and all those stay at home, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we've been talking to customers about doing it in the new modern device management way, which essentially talks about the ability to work anywhere, anytime. It's device independent, so it doesn't matter what device you're using. Use more collaboration and teamwork tools. Make sure that the users, and this is stuff that the user is looking for, the end users, especially with all the Gen X, Gen Y, digital natives essentially, are coming on to these as far simple to use, lots of single sign-on components, and all of it needs to be self-service. So what this means to the organization and to organizations, that needs to be a secure environment. They need to manage the identity and access much more than the devices. They need to push policies that make sense no matter what device they are. So for iPad devices, it's different from Android devices. It's different than whatever device it is. So they need the collaboration and productivity tools associated with that. And of course, all of this needs to be tied to file storage that they can be accessing no matter where they are, what device they're in. And that ultimately means that it has to be cloud-based, cloud-managed. Universal access anytime, anywhere means cloud-based systems. And of course, that means one of the side components to that is there's low or no management of on-prem systems or overhead associated with that. So that's where the conversation starts to get interesting, because how many, how should I say, vendors can provide these? And this is where the Microsoft conversation comes in quite strongly. Because Microsoft 365, I know you're talking about Windows 10, Office 365, enterprise mobility and security systems, but the entire Microsoft suite of products, all of the individual products that you're buying, are now being bundled into the Microsoft 365 suite. And they have two versions of it. They actually multiple versions. The E1 or academic one, as well if you're a college or something. So the E1, the E3, and the E5. And buying as a bundle usually means a much better price than buying individually each one of those components. And that also gives you the ability to have all the products you need for your management of the environment, including Intune, or what is called now Microsoft Endpoint Manager, as well as the Office 365 and all of the components, as well as Azure Active Directory, Azure Premium, and those kinds of things. So, and as I mentioned, and we can go into a lot of details with the team, enabling each one of these workloads depending on the license that you have. And the licensing doesn't have to be everybody available to all. The license simply needs to be right for the user. So if a user uses its own computer and it's going to be accessing only with web-based applications, all of the OneDrive storage and all of the, but you still need to manage desktop for, pardon me, for the desktop, for the users that you have, for the applications that you give them, then you just have a license of E1, which is the least expensive of all of the licenses, and those kinds of things. And we can talk a lot about with the Microsoft team. Eli probably supports you. He knows very well what that means and what that is. So ultimately what this means, though, is if you have the right license, if you have the right products, then you're able to support modern device management and modern provisioning, which basically simply says it's the ability to transform any device that you receive, whether it is a device that has all the OEM software without reimaging, just simply transform that device into a corporate managed device for the components that you need. So if they have BYOD devices, you will only be managing a component of one of the Exchange mailboxes in the Microsoft Outlook component. So they will not be able to manage copy and paste from there, or if they open OneDrive in the web component, on the web side on that device, then they will not be able to download files onto their desktop, or if they do, it's to a specific desktop location. Those kinds of things that you can control. So what you do is you are enabling this environment, which is much simpler, far more secure. It basically there's a much lower TCO because you're not what you're maintaining really is identity management and access management, and you're maintaining the policies that are going to be executed to that profile or that user. So you can order devices, and you're probably familiar with the Mac OS and Business Manager from Apple. From Apple and Apple products. When you order a device, you register that device with Microsoft to be used with your organization, and that is what triggers all of the components. So we ship it directly to the end user, and the end user then opens the device, logs in after it connects to the internet, logs in, and based on the profile that they have, they go ahead and do that. For existing devices, you can enroll them on that, and then it will enroll and set up other configuration for Exchange, for Office, for whatever it is that they need to. You have set up that profile to be set up for, and then it continues forward, even if it is a BYOD component. So how does this modern provisioning work? Essentially, there are 3 steps to the process. First step is modern registration, which is what is called equivalent to Windows Autopilot. So basically what we do is we register that device to your organization prior to leaving the factory. Okay? So that device, if it gets rerouted, stolen, or something like that, when it's open and connected to the internet, the first thing the device does is goes to the Microsoft servers and it says, is this device registered with any organization? And if it is registered, then it comes back and asks you, what's your username and password? And it actually puts your logo in the back. You can configure that, of course. Your logo in the back, and it says, this device belongs to blah, 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 and enter your username and credentials. So at that point, if it doesn't happen like that, then it goes, it's not registered, then it goes and it gets just usually normally used like you do in any organization. That's device registration. That's what Windows Autopilot does. Pure, simple, nothing else. The second step is once the device is recognized by the Microsoft as a device, then it connects that device, because it knows, to your organization's Azure Active Directory, and it then prompts the user for, hey, what's your Azure Active Directory or your credentials, Mr. User? That is when enrollment, upon successful entry of that, that's when enrollment to those devices, to your Intune happens. So that enrollment then provides the system the profile that you're going to be using for that user. So that user will be associated with a profile, and by what I mean the profile is the policies, the settings, the security, of course, all the security components, and the applications that that user has attached in that profile. And then at that moment is when then the third element comes in and it's pushed to the device. That is called device provisioning. That device provisioning is where the lags will highly depend on the bandwidth of the user. Okay, so if they are on a dial-up connection, it's going to take many hours to transfer that information or download those applications, and of course it will depend on how many applications and those kinds of things. But if they are, like most of us, on 1 gig or 500 megs of connections at our homes these days, then it's going to take 5 minutes to provision. And again, and by the way, this will not be an issue in about 2 years from now when 5G is widely enabled. For those users that you have, that may be an issue. They may be in a cabin in Alaska, or they may be in a mining town somewhere in that there's no internet connection. There are options associated with that. You can pre-provision those devices at the configuration center and based on the profile, and then you ship to those users as needed. So we can stage that as that is. Now, for existing devices, this is part of the device registration can be skipped, but you can send a URL to the end users. Please enroll this device into our management system, and then at that point, then the Intune will start managing that device based on that. And by the way, all of the certificates and all of those kinds of things that happen completely transparent to the user, whether it is an iPhone, an Android, or a PC device. And based on the policies, if it is a BYOD device, then the user will be attached to a BYOD profile, which will say perhaps just enable Exchange and Exchange Outlook, and then put the permissions associated with the Exchange Outlook conversation settings, and then maybe will set some sort of a auto password and some sort of a password policy, which they may not have set before because it was a personal device. If it is a corporate device, owned device, then it'll have the appropriate policy associated with it. And those policies are all configured in the Intune console, which is cloud-based enabled. So the only difference between the new device and the existing device is the device registration doesn't happen automatically because they're already deployed. You're sending a link to the user to please enroll that device. So let's go a little bit deeper into the Microsoft Endpoint Manager tool. It is comprised of two elements or consoles. One is Microsoft Intune, and the other one is called Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. that is the old SCCM. Both tools have a purpose. Intune, Microsoft Intune, is the tool that manages anything that is connected to outside the network, internet-based devices, or any remote workers associated with that. Configuration Manager is the tool used for local devices or exclusively local-based devices. And there is a thing called co-management, in which a Windows 10 device can be managed by both tools. That requires hybrid AD to be connected, to be enabled within the environment, within the customer environment. Hybrid AD is the ability to domain join devices like you have been doing for the many, many years you've been running Microsoft technologies into your local Active Directory, as well as taking advantage of Azure Active Directory by Azure Active Directory, Azure AD join devices. So when you have co-managed devices, you are able to basically manage a Windows 10 device, whether that device is in the local network or outside in remote without connecting to the local area network or the local AD environment. It is important to understand that there's no need to install Configuration Manager if you are only enabling modern device management into your environment. Microsoft Intune can manage local area network devices that are not local AD joined inside the network or outside the network. So no matter where those devices are in the environment, as long as there is internet connection, those devices will be discovered along the way. And those devices, by the way, can be not only Windows 10 devices, but Mac OS devices, Android devices, iOS devices as well. So it gives you the entire single pane of glass for all of your devices that you are managing, as Microsoft Intune does, and the Microsoft Intune console does. So Microsoft Intune, what does it do again, is manage devices, manage applications, and then manages compliance. It can be purchased on a standalone licenses or as part of Microsoft 365. And it provides all of the services associated with that. That's your MDM and MAM, mobile device management and mobile application management tools moving forward, so you can manage and maintain your environment. So you might be asking, how do you order Windows Autopilot registered devices from Dell? We make the process very simple. Windows Autopilot is completely free. You can register devices at no cost to you. There are a couple of options. When you order a device, we basically add a SKU to the order that says we want that device registered at the factory. So Windows Autopilot registration happens at the factory. We send that unique ID for that device directly to Microsoft. And you will start to see those devices appear on your device manager Microsoft portal as those devices are shipped to the end user. The first option is to have the standard OEM image that contains all the value-added software from Dell on it. So trialware and all of the tools and utilities associated with that. That's the basic, everybody gets that image. We call it the OEM image. When you receive it, when the end user receives it, the Autopilot registration will be noticed and, of course, will proceed with enrollment into Intune and Azure Active Directory and all those elements that we talked about earlier. Most customers prefer to have an image that doesn't have all of those components on it, the value-added components, trialware, and etc., that it is placed by the OEM on those devices. So we call that, there is an option called generic image. The Dell generic image contains only the ISO from Microsoft plus the device drivers that are associated with that device model. The device will be, of course, Windows Autopilot registered, and the users will have receive that device, and then the entire process to enroll into Intune and push the policies and applications will apply just the same as the OEM image. That is a function of Intune, nothing to do with Autopilot registration per se. Now, there's a third option available that is called Windows Autopilot White Glove Provisioning. And that comes with the Windows generic image, Autopilot registered, but we take one more step in our second touch facilities, in which we are able to connect that device to a secure internet connection, connect directly to your tenant, and then push the profile for that user group to that device. So when the user receives the device, is already pre-configured with those applications that you have defined in that user profile. Those are the three options available today for Windows Autopilot offering. It should be noted that all three options are available with group tag. And group tag is, you can have one group tag per order, and you are able to assign all of those devices in that order a tag in Windows Device Manager that you can query in your enrollment in Intune, so you can push specific applications or specific policies to that set of devices. So it comes in quite handy if you have different business units, or you are ordering for different user groups. Perhaps some policies need to be applied for certain user groups versus other user groups, or certain applications need to be pushed to those. That is the group tag as well. Group tag and Windows Autopilot is no cost to the customers, to you, the customer. And the only cost associated with this is, of course, with the generic image. There is an uptick on cost, and we can provide you with the dollar amount associated with it. And the Windows Autopilot white glove provisioning is also an additional cost, and we will be glad to provide that to you. As you move forward in your journey to modern device management, there are many things to consider. Anywhere from identity on the cloud, impacts on the network. You don't really have to think of images anymore. Your entire Microsoft 365 environment is at play. OneDrive, for no more data is no longer only stored locally. Teams, OneDrive, and the entire SharePoint environment, Exchange Online, and all those elements. Applications, single sign-on to applications, and application delivery and update, the same thing as Windows Update for Business for servicing Windows 10 is at play. There's many items to consider along the way. We have developed roadmaps to help you adopt modern device management, modern provisioning, modern workplace in general with Microsoft technologies. And we will be happy to share with you in a different session or a customized session, we call them workshops, with you, how that will work in your environment. Again, we have an entire service offering associated with moving to modern device management, which starts with identity management, applications, followed by the data, and finally the devices that you're going to be maintaining. We also have a quick start for Microsoft Intune, which in 2 weeks we will be able to cover a lot of the topics that we covered today on how to configure Microsoft Intune, how to configure Azure Active Directory, and deploy devices, including application staging and Azure Active Directory enablement, and Windows Autopilot, as well as anything that has to do with policies, pushing policies to the device, and talk about those migration components. Happy to talk to you about all of those elements. We have many resources available to you to learn on this journey. Not only the Dell Technologies In Focus blog is available, we have written many articles about how to engage in unified endpoint management, as well as modern provisioning, and how to modernize your PC approach. I also write constantly on a blog called moderneuc.com, and I put a lot of information and tips and tricks how to enable modern provisioning in the and help you in your journey, including Windows Autopilot, Intune, and a number of other technologies that I cover on that. There is also lots of published stories, not only from Microsoft, but go to our website at Dell technologies.com, where we publish constantly success stories about managing devices in a modern way. Again, thank you very much for listening to this recording. I appreciate it. Please contact your account team, and we will be happy to engage on a specific conversation with you guys. Cheers. Bye-bye.